Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's South Jersey public hearing session. We don't make light of the fact that you could be doing so many other things tonight, but you're with us, and we appreciate that. Last week, we had a powerful meeting, let me tell you, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say this evening. My name is Charles Barker, and joining me is Commissioner Krista Nash. We would also like to thank our Public Engagement and Education Committee team for their support and attendance. As with the North Jersey and Central Jersey meetings, our focus here is hearing from you, the people, and how you think tax revenue should be used for social equity investments. We will hear from our Executive Director, Jeff Brown, and then Commissioner Nash and I will briefly outline our cannabis program and some of the statutory guidelines. After our presentation, the remainder of the public hearing is focused on listening to your creative ideas and your creative thoughts. With that said, Director Brown, take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner Barker. Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Thank you to the whole Public Engagement Education Committee. I will keep things very brief because we have more people signed up to speak tonight than we've had at any of our previous meetings. So thank you for everyone who's signed up, everyone who's chosen to spend your Wednesday evening with us. We like to be data-driven at the commission and make data-driven decisions. And tonight and at our other hearings, we're collecting some of the most important data, which is really what the community wants and the thoughts of the community, especially when it comes to what to do with revenue that potentially can be raised from the sale of cannabis in the state of New Jersey. So with that, I just want to thank you. I also want to echo the thanks to the staff members who have helped to put this on. Wesley McWhite, our Director of Office of Diversity and Inclusion, Tony Ann Blake, Director of Communications, Kelly Anderson Thomas, Deputy Executive Director, and Justin Rodriguez, our Chief of Staff here at the CRC. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but our staff is tremendous and they've done a great job on these hearings. So we really look forward to hearing from you. And thank you most of all to Commissioner Barker and Commissioner Nash for putting on three excellent hearings. I'm really looking forward to what we hear tonight from the community.
Thank you, Director Brown, and welcome everyone. And thank you, South Jersey, for this amazing showing this evening. Before we begin the public comment portion, I wanted to share information about the hearing process and provide an overview of the cannabis industry here in New Jersey. The Commission was tasked with holding 3 regional hearings in the North, Central, and Southern regions of New Jersey in order to solicit public input on how social equity investments from revenue derived from the cannabis businesses here in New Jersey should be appropriated. In the past 2 weeks, we have held 2 hearings, one for the Northern region and one for the Central region. And today is our final hearing for those of you in South Jersey. After we conclude the hearings, the Commission will review and analyze the information gathered from these 3 hearings, and we will provide a recommendation report to the Legislature. Prior to July 1st, the Legislature will then provide an itemized listing of the investments and how those investments are intended to support and advance social equity. Now, I want to give you some background on the cannabis industry in New Jersey and where the revenue for appropriations will come from. In February of 2021, Governor Murphy signed into law legislation known as the CREAM Act, which legalized personal use cannabis for those 21 and older and set the framework for the market here. The law established 6 types of cannabis businesses, which are cultivating, that means growing cannabis indoors or outdoors, manufacturing, producing cannabis goods, wholesaling, storing, buying, selling in bulk, distribution, which is transporting bulk cannabis, but not across state lines, and retail, commonly known as dispensaries that sell cannabis products. And lastly, delivery, which means delivery to your home. Along those lines, the Commission recognizes the importance and the need for diversity in the industry. and the Commission has prioritized the review of applications based upon certain categories the Commission deems most important to get up and running, such as economically disadvantaged areas and impact zones. Specific information about these designations can be found by scanning the QR code at the bottom right of the slide. However, one of the Commission's highest priorities is to support social equity businesses, which are businesses owned by people who have lived in economically disadvantaged areas, meet a certain income level, or who have had past cannabis convictions. And diversely owned businesses are also a high priority. Those are minority owned, women owned, and disabled veteran owned. This evening, we are here to listen to your ideas on how the revenue generated by this industry should be appropriated. As you can see, this Commission has truly made social equity a priority. And now I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Barker to tell you more. Commissioner Barker?
Thank you, Commissioner Nash, for outlining our program and some of the social equity rules that we implemented. But what about the tax revenue generated from the legal cannabis industry here in New Jersey? Where does that go and how will it be used? Well, the CREAM Act establishes a CREAM fund where a majority of cannabis revenue will be deposited once personal use legal sales begin. Listed here are some of the different statutory requirements for the legislature to follow when appropriating cannabis tax revenue. One major provision that I want to highlight is that at least 70% of all tax revenue from retail sales of cannabis items will go towards social equity investments in impact zones. Again, at least 70% of all tax revenue from retail sales of cannabis items will go towards social equity investments in impact zones. Now, impact zones are supposed to represent and focus on socially and economically disadvantaged municipalities most harmed by the failed war on drugs. And it's going to be up to all of us to ensure that funds are targeted to our most harmed impact zones. Another provision that I briefly want to highlight is that tax revenue can be used to provide direct financial assistance to qualifying persons, which may be determined by the legislature. This is yet another opportunity to reinvest in the people and communities, especially Black and Brown people and communities that continue to bear the brunt of the failed drug war. The CRC also used its authority from the CREAM Act to establish a social equity excise fee on personal use cannabis cultivators to add even more revenue that can be used for social equity investments. This is in addition to the rules that focus on social equity that Commissioner Nash mentioned earlier, and the explicit statutory requirements for appropriating tax revenue through a social equity lens. And before I get into explaining the social equity excise fee, I just want to mention that New Jersey has some of the lowest taxes in the country when compared to cannabis markets in other states, and that's including this excise fee and municipal taxes. Now, back to the excise fee. Personal use cannabis cultivators will pay a fee on the sales of usable cannabis to any other cannabis manufacturer, cannabis wholesaler, or retailer once legal sales begin. And now this excise fee is 1/3 of 1% of the average retail price per ounce, and it will be for the first 9 months of legal sales. And so in the example before you on the screen, if the average price of an ounce of cannabis is $300 at that time, then the excise fee will be 99 cents. States are generating hundreds of millions of dollars in cannabis tax revenue annually. California, in fact, generated, I believe, $1 billion in tax revenue. And so when we think about that and think about 70% of tax revenue going towards these impact zones, we have potential for real change in our communities that need it most. Now, after these first 9 months, the CRC can adjust the fee as the cost of cannabis changes. But all of the revenue generated through the excise fee will be used for social equity investments. And so with the majority of tax revenue from retail sales of cannabis items and all social equity excise fees going towards social equity investments, it is critical that we listen to your visions for where the revenue should go and what social equity investments should be made. It is our understanding that the recommendation memo to the governor and the legislature will not be limited to just excise fees, but it will also factor in the majority of tax revenue so that there is a greater pool of funding to address necessary social equity investments. And as we've stated many times, there is no right answer to social equity. It may come in the form of improved healthcare, housing development, economic opportunity, investment funds, social services, professional development, youth services, educational programs, financial literacy. The list goes on and on. The key is that it aims to right the wrongs of the failed drug war and the harm that it imposed onto countless families and communities. So please, share your thoughts and ideas with us this evening. We research and we have ideas about what investments may work, but you know your block best, you know your community best, you know your town best, and you know the conditions and what it will take to improve the quality of life where you live. Share that with us. Let us know what you need. And as we've shared before with you, envision the future of what it can be, not what it may be right now. Last week, we shared some ideas and discussed a few examples in order to highlight what other municipalities are doing with tax revenue. We talked about and highlighted Evanston, Illinois, where cannabis tax revenue was used to create a reparations home ownership program. When we think about how wealth is generated through home ownership, these are critical ideas that can really gear up generational wealth in communities that need it most, in our Black and brown communities. In California, over $100 million in cannabis tax revenue has been used to provide grants to community organizations. These community organizations then in turn aid people in communities harmed by the failed war on drugs. They also created a $100 million fund for municipalities to develop and further build out their local marketplaces. Colorado has contributed over $400 million in cannabis tax revenue to their state's public school system. And Illinois has used cannabis tax revenue to set up a grant and loan program for eligible equity applicants. These are just some of the ways that tax revenue can be used for social equity investments, especially for Black and brown people in Black and brown communities. And so as we conclude our presentation and gear up for comments, we hope that you are informed enough at the moment to consider ideas to share with us this evening and motivated enough to share what you envision. With that, I am introducing Tony Ann Blake, our Director of Communications, who will go over protocol for the public comment period. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As per usual, everyone has a 3-minute limit. And because there are so many people signed up to speak tonight, I'm going to ask that if there are multiple people from a single organization, that one person speak on behalf of that organization. I will be calling the names in blocks of 5. If you hear your name, please raise your hand electronically and I will call on you to speak. We will start with our first 5. Brendan Robinson, Zach Katzen, Catherine Gutterson, Tisha Harris, and Dennis Brown. Brendan Robinson, Zach Katzen, Catherine Gutterson, Tisha Harris, and Dennis Brown. If any of those individuals are present, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Brendan Robinson, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Tony Ann, and good evening, Commissioner Barker, Commissioner Nash, Director Brown. My name is Brendan Robinson. I'm the co-founder and president of the Minority Cannabis Academy. I'm also the co-founder and vice president of 420 NJ Events, alongside my brother, Stanley Okoro. 420 NJ Events is a Black-owned cannabis lifestyle brand advocating for minorities that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. We've hosted expungement clinics, cannabis career workshops, educational seminars, and we did a medical marijuana sign-up event just last month. And we've done all those events in the last 12 months. We've partnered with MSOs, legal firms, 2022 RFA applicants, media firms, the list goes on. But we've been doing whatever we need to do to give the Black and Brown community the educational experiences that are needed to truly start destigmatizing this plant both inside and outside our very own communities. I've spoken about the importance of cannabis education in the Black and Brown community on the last 2 calls, but this one's personal. Me and my brother are from South Jersey, born and raised. We're from a small town called Chislehurst. And while Chislehurst may not be an impact zone today, I can assure you it was in the 1990s and early 2000s when we were living there. I sat back and watched my father go to prison for cannabis, my older brothers, my uncles. I'm literally the only male in my family that has not been incarcerated for cannabis possession or distribution. I say all that because before we explore cannabis as a business, we need to understand cannabis as a culture. We need to understand the stigma that still plagues the cannabis industry to this day. And we need to really ensure that the funding not only goes to educational programs like Minority Cannabis Academy, but also to groups like 420 NJ Events, which are geared towards creating educational experiences, networking opportunities, introducing a new audience to an emerging industry. When you look at South Jersey as a marketplace, it's been the slowest to the race in comparison to Central and North Jersey. We have the fewest dispensaries, they aren't close to one another. And most importantly, we have a wave of consumers that are ready for this adult market to go live, but haven't had the events, programs, seminars, so on and so forth, to properly educate themselves around the many facets of this industry. So again, I would just like the commission to take a hard look at the work that 420 NJ Events is doing, the work that groups like Roll Up Life are doing, and there's others, but our community needs community right now more than ever. And we need education, both formal and informal. We need organizations that are for minorities, by minorities, leading the charge. And I really appreciate you all. Thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. Have a great night.
Thank you. Zach Ketson, Catherine Gutterson, Tisha Harris, Dennis Brown. Seeing none of those individuals present, I will move on to the next 5. Rhonda Wardlow Hurley, Reva Foster, Marlena Ubel, Steve Young, Cheryl Spalding. If any of those individuals are present, Rhonda Wardlow Hurley, Reva Foster, Marlena Ubel, Steve L. Young, Cheryl Spalding. I see Marlena up. Go ahead. Marlena, go ahead. Marlena? Marlena seems to be having some technical difficulties. I will move on. Rhonda Wardlow Hurley, Reva Foster, Stephen Young, Cheryl Spalding. Are any of those individuals present? Okay, we'll move on. Jeffrey Sutherland, Ivy Lee Pickens, Kyle Rosner, Edward Lemeau, Rory Wood. Are any of those individuals present? I will read some more. Oh, I see Rory Wood. Go ahead, Rory.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, Commissioner Nash, Commissioner Barker, and Director Brown. My name is Rory Wood. I'm of Cush College here in South Jersey. I had a chance to listen in on the previous 2 hearings, and I'm happy to hear that there's a lot of people expressing the need to allocate funds for training and education. Last year, I had a chance to speak on a commission during a monthly NJCRC meeting, and I brought up the fact that there will be a need for workplace training and education in regards to cannabis horticulture, processing, and bud tending. Out of the 100 or so people that I had a chance to speak, there really wasn't a lot of people talking about education and job training. So it's great to hear that people are speaking of its importance. So the question is, how do we do that? Well, California, they adopted something called a Cannabis Workforce Development Grant Program, whereas applicants have to show proof of their residency, which are in areas that have been impacted by illegal cannabis, their income and previous any cannabis arrests. Once verified, those funds then go to the school that have been approved by the state to receive these particular grants. So that is one way that I believe that social equity funds could be allocated. Another way is to have community outreach programs where we continue to educate those who still think negatively about cannabis. There are a lot of areas that didn't opt in to having cannabis in their community. Yet some of those communities have been ravished by the opiate crisis. Well, I'm here to tell you that I've seen and heard lots of people kick their opiate addiction by way of cannabis, edibles, tinctures, oils, and other methods. So I think that not only should we put funds into education, training, workforce, but I also feel as though we should just have some type of town halls in these certain areas to just try to educate the people about cannabis so they don't think so negatively about it and how it can actually help instead of hurt. So to summarize, I just believe that job training, community outreach can benefit from social equity funds and help move recreational cannabis in a positive direction. So in conclusion, I just want to say thank you to Commissioner Nash. These hearings and Commissioner Barker, these hearings have been great. And I've been listening since the North Jersey and the Central Jersey, and I'm glad we're here in South Jersey. I was born and raised in Camden, so there's no other area down here that I have witnessed personally how drugs have impacted our community, but I made it out of that community, was able to go on to college and get my degree in chemistry. So now I want to be in a part of the educational piece of just educating people as far as how to cultivate, bud tend, cooking with cannabis, and just educate the community. So I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Jay Lassiter, Samuel D. Richter, Todd Edwards, Miriam Saluki, Vidra Chandler. Are any of those individuals present? Jay Lassiter, Samuel D. Richter, Todd Edwards, Miriam Saluki, and Vidra Chandler. I see Vera Chandler. Vidra Chandler, go ahead.
Hi, y'all can hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. I'm Deidre Chandler. I'm born and raised in Camden, New Jersey, and still a current resident here. So thank you to the last person for shouting out Camden, starting off strong. I have a couple of things that I would like to see come from the tax revenue generated by the cannabis industry. First, I think that infrastructure improvements for the communities that you're mentioning and highlighting are extremely important. Everything from parks to roads to school buildings, public buildings, libraries, things like that, things that we lost and have suffered so much from urban decay following the war on drugs. In addition, I think that housing needs to be prioritized above all. I live in Camden as a matter of choice. I'm also college educated, have a great job, lovely family, but this is my home and I live here for that reason, but I hate to see so many of the things that have happened to it. And I see that for so many people, Camden is a sentence as opposed to an option. And I think cities like it. And I would like to see a rebuilding whereby people are able to stay in their homes even as infrastructure improves. So we know that improvements to infrastructure sometimes result in gentrification and displacement. So I would like to see some similar reparation programs such as home buyer assistance, but also property tax abatements and assistance for residents who are longtime residents of impact zones and economically disadvantaged areas who will perhaps initially benefit from some of the changes that are coming their way, but may end up being displaced by some of those things. And finally, I would like to see a percent for art. Public art goes such a long way in terms of educating people, inspiring people, creating just livable spaces and communities. And it's so often reserved for communities where there's money available in surplus. So now that we're about to have a little more surplus and that's going to these communities, I think that public art should be prioritized, and there should be a set aside for that as well, in addition to training artists that live in these communities, helping them to understand that their talents are not just for pleasure, but can be professionalized and can be used for civic engagement as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next 5. Lincoln Grattan, Anna Delgado, Gail Muhammad, Shakira Abdul Ali, Kay Price. If any of those individuals are present, please raise your hand. Lincoln Grattan, Anna Delgado, Gail Muhammad, Shakira Abdul Ali, and Kay Price. Are any of those individuals present? Not seeing any, I will move on. Edward J. Tyson, William Caruso, Belinda Manning, Thomas H. Pyle, Chris Goldstein. I see Bill Caruso. Go ahead.
Hey, good evening. Thank you all very much, first of all, for what you're doing. There's been a lot of talk recently about what we haven't done yet in this space. I'd like to just take a minute to talk about what we have done and where we're going. I think what this CRC has put together already, having been present in a variety of the policy efforts that have gone on in the past in my former life and the advocacy movement, talking about how we would get to this space and how we would really be lifting up the social equity side of this discussion. It was an esoteric discussion. The CRC has put together now a rubric and a framework that lives on, and it only could live on through a regulatory framework. And so I applaud the work that you guys have accomplished already. And I think this is a great jumping off point to figure out now how this reinvestment can occur. I think there's confidence and faith in this commission, in the work that it's done already, and the guidance that you're going to provide going forward into where these reinvestments can occur. I think the main focus now should be about maximizing the value of these dollars that are raised by these funds. I think traditional public-private partnerships work in this case. I think we can look to those in both the private sector and also the nonprofit sector to make this money go further and require organizations and groups to potentially match some of these funds in the form of grants. Moreover, I know there's been some consternation about the municipal fees that have been assessed. I think that there is a way that this commission, through the carrot approach, can incentivize reinvestment of those dollars in things related to social equity in a larger sense beyond cannabis. But I think by matching those funds at the local level, the commission could maximize its dollars as well. I think the other thing I would tell you, though, is the work you're doing here related to cannabis is only going to be maximized when our federal partners unlock some of the tools that small businesses are going to need, and will attract other research dollars into the mix. Your role in that space would be more advocate than it would be in any way an implementer because of those provisions. And so we'll encourage you to continue doing that. But I do want to underscore again the work of this commission in several months to put together the first of its kind craft cannabis effort to incentivize the growth for entrepreneurs, minority, women-owned, veteran-owned, and ex-offenders is going to be maximized now by the funding available to reinvest in those folks that don't have the traditional access to capital. So I would encourage you to continue working through this rubric that you put together and then look to develop more public-private partnerships, municipal and local partnerships too, to maximize those dollars. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. Belinda Manning, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
My name is Belinda Manning. 75 years old, and I am third generation calling this community, Pleasantville, my home. I've lived here for almost all of my 73 years. And a lot of times I think about Desmond Tutu's quote when he says that at some point we're going to have to stop pulling people out of the river and start going upstream and figuring out why they're falling in. And I think that The road and the stream of human suffering is so long that getting to why is going to be really difficult. But one thing I do know, I think that we have the moral and mental fortitude to mitigate some of the damage. I've worked in both the corporate environment and the public sector. And one thing I know about both of those things is that if we keep doing what we've been doing, we're going to keep getting what we've got. Leaders in both of those sectors have long planned for people, for communities, but have never learned the skill of working with. And if we're going to change communities, leaders have to learn how to work with. When we don't have the opportunity to hear all of the voices in a community, solutions don't exist. And there are models, there are change models that have been built since the early 90s around organizational leadership and organizational development that require whole system and collaborative thinking, and requires planning that looks at the whole system, the whole community, government, health, education, and brings as a collaborative those people together to both establish the goals for that community and to develop the action plans. And that's the kind of change model we need. We need to build capacity back into communities that have been destroyed. We need people that live in those communities, in this community, to begin to see themselves as the essential people that they really are, and not the expendable people that they've been treated or have become. And until we do that and accept them as partners in this struggle and provide them with the tools that they need to participate, those communities are not going to grow again. So while we're putting the wheels on the bicycle real quickly, while we're putting the wheels on this bicycle, we got to keep moving. And so we got to still go down to the shore and do harm reduction. We got to do harm reduction, and we got to pick those people up that are on the shore and bring them back home and bring them back to wholeness.
Thank you so much for your comment. Next up is Chris Goldstein. Chris, go ahead.
There we go, unmute. Good evening. Thanks again for holding these important hearings. I'm here in South Jersey. I'm right here in Willingboro tonight. And this is the town I was born in. This is the town I live in today. I love my community. And Willingboro is one of those towns that is going to fit into the definition of an impact zone. And it's a unique community because we don't have a lot of retail or business space. It's a big bedroom community. It's mostly just houses, families like mine. But Willingboro also has a unique history. Like Levittown in Pennsylvania and all the Levitt towns, Willingboro was originally only for white residents. It wasn't until the 1970s when a gentleman who I met years ago named Reverend Willie James sued for equal access to housing and won, that by the time I grew up here in the 1980s, Willingboro was this amazing diverse community. But we endured the impact of prohibition. That was searches, stops, arrests, property seizures, raids, years of time for people in jails, prisons, on probation. And all the data shows that cannabis prohibition enforcement always targeted Black residents more harshly. Willingboro is a majority Black community. That's the beautiful thing about it. But the impact of prohibition really fell down on Willingboro. So now comes the time for some of the tax revenue to come to towns just like ours. When we talk about the impact of prohibition, we're often talking about how police treated Black cannabis consumers. So first and foremost, we don't want our cannabis taxes going to the police after legalization. That's a very simple deal. And as much as I've heard so many great things, I have to say Vidra Chandler is my new hero. Everything that she said is for Camden should be coming in every community. Public art, investment in infrastructure, housing equity. But don't give cannabis taxes to the police. There has to be some way to prevent that process. And also, in order to get the taxes flowing, you have to have people like me, consumers, buy it. Now, I saw earlier an earmark point of $300 an ounce for a price of an ounce of legal marijuana. I'm telling you, I'm a writer and I'm not sure I could afford that. We've got to start talking about prices about $150 to $250 plus tax. That will get people like me to buy lots of regulated marijuana, and that will get the taxes flowing. So again, that's critical for consumer participation. I was one of nearly 2.8 million voters who approved legalization 2 years ago. And I don't want my tax money being misappropriated. I want my tax money going to small businesses and people, not corporations that are attached to possibly Russia. So thank you again for your work, and thank you for everything that you do. And I hope you can have more town halls like this. It was great to hear everybody's comments. Thanks again.
Thank you. I will call the next 5. Dwayne Williams, Nafisa A. Goldsmith, Sheila Green, Michael A. Huffman, Esquire, Reverend Dr. Leslie Harrison. Any of those individuals are present, please raise your hand. Dwayne Williams, Nafisa A. Goldsmith, Sheila Green, Michael A. Hoffman, Esquire, Reverend Dr. Leslie Harrison. Sheila Green, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Sheila Green. I am also a Camden resident, Camden City, since 1965. I am also a member of the former ad hoc committee for Camden City. I was the vice chair to the ad hoc committee under our chair, Nichelle Pace. We, in September of 2021, if I'm not mistaken, because it is 22, right? Trying to get my years straight. We put together what we thought was going to be just what was needed for Camden City. And we looked at our tax base and we had recommendations, and our recommendations consisted of the following. We wanted an exercising the municipality maximum 2% transfer tax and 2% user tax as follows. 1% transfer tax to a standard class 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 license in years, and 1 and 2 beginning with years 3 through 10, a 2% transfer tax should be applied. Now, one of the things that I noticed is that 60% of the people in New Jersey voted to make cannabis legal. We are now looking at taxation for a product that was illegal before. The state of New Jersey wants dollars from the people who have suffered and struggled and been incarcerated for now a legal product, a product that has now been stamped by way of various participants who now legalize it based on names because of the medical use. Once, at one point in time, cannabis had no names. There were no names, there were no strain names, there were nothing. You had colors, you had flavors, and that was it. Now we have everything else and a taxation that is yet to come. We feel as though that the 1.5% of user tax recommendations will apply to standard businesses and micro businesses that are operating more than one class type of cannabis in the city of Camden. Allocations of all cannabis tax revenues, both impact zone and local municipal taxes. Okay, the first 70% be distributed as follows. Micro businesses and social equity applicant loans and grants, building external infrastructure, providing micro businesses and technical assistance, and STEM programs for young adults 18 to 21, non-plant, and 21 to 25 cannabis careers. As the gentleman said in the beginning, education is one of the most important parts. As a former US Senate staffer, as Bill Caruso has been the same, who is my hero, we feel as though that educating all of South Jersey and any other parts of Jersey on cannabis and what it does and what it can do is the most important part of anything before taxation even begins. So if we educate before and make sure that we get that in place, the rest of this will fall in as it's supposed to be.
Thank you so
know-
much for your
Thank you.
time this evening. Michael Hoffman, go ahead.
Hi, and good evening. My name is Michael Hoffman. I'm a solo practitioner from Vineland, and I'm glad I get to speak to you tonight. I previously submitted 2 ideas in writing and spoke at them at the last meeting, which were about expungements and about insurance subsidies. But after hearing Commissioner Barker's specific suggestion and challenge that we think outside the box and come up with radical ideas, I challenged myself to come up with a couple of radical ideas, and I believe I have them because and they're specific to South Jersey because it's a part of who I am and where I'm from. The first suggestion that I have is one that I had previously submitted with Gaetano Lardieri and myself to create a science and research panel to help with research and development in the industry and around the industry, both in the social sciences and in the hard sciences as well. This can be used to not only support social equity aims, but to help research social equity goals. The second idea is close to my heart with regard to Vineland specifically, and that is to create a cooperative cannabis auction. This would be similar to, if you've been to Vineland, we have a produce auction where the local produce producers and growers and the farmers bring their crops. Wouldn't it be great in our cannabis industry if we had a place where those micro cultivators and large cultivators could bring their product and sell it to class 5 retailers or class 2 manufacturers and actually have enough product and a variable product and be able to determine the price of a product? That would be extremely useful to all of those people within the micro cannabis industry, because they'd have the opportunity to, if they're a retailer, actually get product right from the beginning. And if they're a cultivator, to actually sell their wares to the highest bidder. It also could offer a secondary line of usefulness, because it could be used to allow for, upon testing to see if it's safe, the sale of seized product from unlicensed or unregistered product. So you could actually sell from those sources as long as it was safe instead of destroying it. And that is something that social equity and this industry in New Jersey is about: maintaining what's been grown and growing versus destroying. And that should be the goal of social equity. Thank you for your
so
time
much.
and for considering it.
Thank you. The next 5 names are Bill McKee, Charlene Walker, Danielle Hoods, Zelly Thomas, Stafford Miller. Bill McKee Jr., Charlene Walker, Danielle Hoods, Zelly Thomas, and Stafford Miller. I see Bill McKee Jr. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
Hello. I believe this money should be earmarked for towns that have allowed marijuana to be grown for property tax deductions, as well as given to towns that border those towns, because all of the residents now must deal with the ongoing odor, noise, and other problems with those grow facilities. I feel that the part of that money should also be used to enforce the odor and noise pollution and require those towns, all towns, to tell their residents what, whether they have a grow facility or a retailer, and the importance of reporting any odor and noise or other problems. I feel this is a good way to safeguard the community instead of hiding the problem. And the state did create the problem when they legalized marijuana. And I feel that you need to really make sure that you earmark for the tax deduction, as well as the enforcement of it so that it doesn't get out of control, because right now, that is an ongoing problem.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
okay. Thank you, sir. Danielle Hudas, go ahead.
Hello, you can hear me, right?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
My name is Danielle Hudis from Burlington County. I'm testifying today on behalf of New Jersey Harm Reduction Coalition. By now, we are aware of the vast harm that cannabis prohibition and the war on drugs at large have caused communities, particularly and especially Black and Brown communities. Our punitive drug policies fund the criminal legal system at our community's expense. The Cannabis Regulatory Commission should make considerations that will tangibly and meaningfully right those wrongs, which should look like utilizing the social equity excise fee to invest in the wellness of communities harmed by the war on drugs and by preventable overdose deaths. The communities most harmed by cannabis prohibition and the war on drugs should have a continual voice in the decisions that are being made on their behalf. Racial equity and reparations should remain front and center. Critically, no revenue should be funneled into law enforcement, but rather into public services that focus on housing, public and mental health, education, community and social development, childcare, etc. Additionally, funding to any drug use prevention treatment type programs should fund harm reduction services, which value the autonomy and humanity of people who use drugs, and which use evidence-based methods to meet the needs of each participant, to connect them with supportive structures, education, and risk reduction supplies. I celebrate the legalization of a cannabis market in New Jersey, which was an incredibly popular decision by voters who are tired of the war on drugs. And I will celebrate even more fully when I know that Black and Brown communities most harmed by the war on drugs are able to continually participate in the decisions surrounding their own community's restoration, and that the excise revenue is being utilized to directly support said restoration and not to perpetuate dangerous and deadly drug war policing. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you. The next 5 names: Yasmin Ori, Christian Vascarino, Reverend Brian McAllister, Deborah Joyce Dow, Sarika Gupta. Yasmin Ori, Christian Vascarino, Reverend Brian McAllister, Deborah Joyce Dow, and Sarika Gupta. I see Yasmin Ori. Go ahead. Go ahead, Yasmin.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. Ms. Tony, thank you, Commissioner Barker and Commissioner Nash. Thank you so much for your time tonight. This is truly an exciting time. I just want to say hello to everyone else that has presented. Thank you so much, because this is my first hearing. I heard about this on, I think it was Tuesday, and I just started reading up on everything and what's happening in New Jersey, and I'm truly excited. So what I want to share regarding the revenue, my thoughts would be for the funds to go to nonprofit programs that are designed to impact children, women, and men, programs like teaching education and fulfilling the gaps of social, medical, and financial areas. My second thought is for households who have food insecurities, those families who are denied food stamps. Because of their income, they're still living paycheck to paycheck. We can start by possibly using the school system to start with the families who qualify for reduced lunches. And lastly, for scholarships for high school students who have PTSD, who have struggled in school and feel like they don't have a chance and can be awarded an opportunity for the most improved student, and instead of, having, the best GPA. And these are my thoughts, and I appreciate your time, and let's get this ball rolling. Let's start changing lives with these taxes.
Thank you, Yasmin. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
I wanted to remind everyone, the name that's showing up on my screen needs to match the name that you registered with. That is the name I will call, and that is the name I am looking for. If you have a different name, I invite you to go to the corner of your screen and do a rename so that I will know that the person registered is the person that's showing up on my screen. The next name up is Christian Fuscarino. Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing me to provide some public comment tonight. I'll be submitting additional written comments on the link that you provided there. Commissioner Barker, Commissioner Nash, thank you for your time. My name is Christian Fuscarino. I'm the Executive Director at Garden State Equality. We're New Jersey's largest education and advocacy organization for the LGBTQ community. I wanted to start my comment tonight with a little history lesson for those of you who might not have been an adult in the 80s, in the 1980s. LGBTQ activists were one of the first main groups advocating for medicinal marijuana laws, while gay men were quite literally dying in the streets of San Francisco and New York City. And at the time, the government was turning a blind eye to the AIDS crisis. Treatment was few and far between. Activists were calling for medicinal marijuana because dying from AIDS was painful. Weed was a way to cope with that pain and not sit your final months and weeks in a hospital on morphine, if that hospital would even administer those drugs. Many hospitals would often leave the AIDS floor, the floors with the AIDS patients unattended. We cannot forget this dark history and the activists that were slowly chipping away at the criminalization construct that is now removed today here in New Jersey. We can also not forget those who were left with no option, who were incarcerated for purchasing marijuana for themselves or their loved ones living with HIV. Fast forward to today, you have a population of people that win the worst of nearly every category, unfortunately. Nearly 40% of the entire youth homeless population identifies as LGBTQ. That means nearly 50% of every homeless child in this country identifies as LGBTQ because their parents kicked them out of their home simply because of who they love or how they identify. Transgender women of color represent the highest percentage of unemployed in this country. LGBTQ youth experience some of the highest rates of bullying in schools. It is without question that transgender women, especially our Black and brown siblings, have been disproportionately targeted by law enforcement over the decades. We have made great progress here in New Jersey, but injustices are still taking place. I could go on, but I have 32 seconds left. So I want to just end by talking about how we support these funds using in a restorative justice way. I'd like to propose developing workforce development trainings and programs targeted to these communities, developing a housing system that is truly statewide to help address homelessness. There are only 18 beds exclusively for the LGBTQ community in our entire state of 9 million plus people. Providing incentives to marijuana companies that are employing non-white, non-heterosexual, non-cis individuals. Funding the work of reentry organizations, harm reduction organizations, supporting mental health services, especially those that address adverse childhood experiences, given that many of those children grow up and seek drugs to cope with the trauma that they grew up with. I'm hopeful that you will ensure these funds are used in a restorative justice way. Our country and our state has made many historical wrongs.
Thank you so much for your comment this evening. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Christian. Reverend McAllister, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for having me tonight. I will be brief. I'm Reverend Brian McAllister. I pastor in the state of New Jersey. I work with Salvation and Social Justice, and I'm a former pastor in South Jersey in the city of Camden. For those of you that are from Camden, the Centerville section specifically. As we approach this topic tonight, I want to echo the sentiments of many other individuals that have come before me, that I believe that these funds should go directly to socially and economically disadvantaged communities that have been the most harmed by the war on drugs. Speaking of Camden, where I used to serve, I would say there, my heart is for young people and education as it relates to young people. And for a while in Camden, closing schools has been a school improvement strategy. And I would suggest that it was a misguided attempt to improve the education of Black and brown children. And we can only wonder what would have happened if, rather than closing schools, that we could have improved schools with money. I believe that when we look at that, that these funds should go to public schools, school buses, home ownership programs, funding and assistance for entrepreneurship in and outside of the cannabis industry. And I want to echo the thoughts of an individual that came before me, that I believe that we are in fact taking a step backwards if these funds do go towards law enforcement. As we know, the Black residents were more than 3 times as likely as white residents to be charged with possessing drugs despite similar rates of usage. And so I feel that when we look at this, that we are not doing these impact zones a favor, but when we look at the state of New Jersey, that we owe this to the future of these communities and these individuals, so that we can level the playing field and right the wrongs that have been done in the past. God bless you, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you, Reverend. I will call the next 5 names: Diana McElroy, Stephen P. Lehman, Tanisha Gibbs, Diane Genko, Arati Kribich. Diana McElroy, Stephen P. Lehman, Tanisha Gibbs, Diane Genko, Arati Kribich. I see Arati. Go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today. Good evening, Commissioners Nash and Barker, Director Brown, and audience members who have testified and who are listening. My name is Arati Kribich. I am testifying on behalf of New Jersey Working Families Party. As others have shared here during this session, I'm sure past sessions as well, we have data from the New Jersey Policy Perspective and others that shows us that the war on drugs has been an abysmal failure and has only succeeded in harming people in communities of color. In fact, New Jersey now leads the nation in racial disparities in incarceration. So we know that Black people are 12 times more likely, Hispanic, Latino people are 2 times more likely to be incarcerated than white residents. In particular, Black residents are 3.3 times more likely to be arrested for drug violations than their white peers, despite the fact that white people both use and sell criminalized drugs at higher rates. We know that New Jersey has spent billions of dollars to perpetuate an ineffective, expensive, and clearly racially discriminatory set of policies. So it is far past time that we end our adherence to these cruel policies and instead actually invest in Black and Latino communities most harmed by the discriminatory enforcement of the drug war. To do that, it is crucial that monies from the excise tax must not be used to fund further policing. Law enforcement continues to receive significant funding from multiple government entities. As a former council member in New Jersey, I know that one of the largest portions of municipal budgets is devoted to law enforcement. However, it is crystal clear that more policing is not the answer. We already know from the disastrously failed war on drugs that increasing policing has created more harm than good, particularly true in communities already harmed by the war on drugs. So for excise fees to go to the police is more than insult to injury. It's perpetuating failed, dangerous, and discriminatory policies. We need to end that. We need for the state to use this money for social services and support, improved and increased mental health care, affordable housing, and on drug treatment services based on evidence-based harm reduction approach. It's imperative that these investments are rooted in community organizations led by people that are most harmed, not through law enforcement expansion of services. On a final note, thank you for this opportunity. This is important and appreciated, but it's not enough. We need more of these opportunities. We need more outreach and more input within our communities. And we need the state to create a truly participatory process so that more of us can share our ideas on how to use these funds to benefit the ones who have been harmed the most. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I will call the next 5. Tracy Wells Huggins, Solomon Middleton Williams, Bill Barlow, Jacqueline DeVore, Brian McAllister, Cheryl Murray Powell, Tracy Wells Huggins, Solomon Middleton Williams, Bill Barlow, Jacqueline DeVore, Brian McAllister, Cheryl Murray Powell. Solomon Middleton Williams, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you to the commissioners for hosting this event tonight. Solomon Middleton Williams, I serve as a deputy director for the North Community Street team, where we train untraditional leaders within our community. And those untraditional leaders looks like those who've been arrested by this failed war on drugs here in New Jersey. And part of what we're asking for as an organization or as a community is that these dollars, these tax dollars, be allocated directly to community-based organizations that hire and train those who've been impacted by this failed war. In CST, we have seen the benefits. Currently, we have 72 employees who are all affected by this war on drugs. These folks are gainfully employed. Again, as our previous caller said, we do not seek to have dollars into law enforcement. In fact, if dollars aren't put into law enforcement, it will be a slap into our community. The same system that has harmed, over-incarcerated, over-policed, and has taken lives away in families and separated families for way too long. Again, we're calling for no dollars investment into police, but dollars invested into community-based public safety initiatives similar to the North Community Street team. We also would like to lift up our partners across the state who are on this call and thank you guys for your commitment for making this happening. And what I would like to do, commissioners, is use the next 50 seconds of silence for the failed war on drugs, for the families who have been separated because of this failed war on drugs, for those who lost their lives because of the failed war on drugs. And I would like to take, again, the last 50 seconds to commemorate those people that we've lost. I'll begin my time. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Cheryl Murray Powell, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Cheryl Murray Powell, Esquire, a cannabis agricultural dietary supplement and trade attorney. I'm really impressed with this public opportunity to comment and determine the future of funds that are allocated for community redevelopment as received from taxes from the industry. I just have a few suggestions. I've been a longtime cannabis legalization activist, and during the pandemic, our cannabis workers were deemed essential, which puts cannabis right in the same category with food and pharmaceuticals. And I think this is a huge victory that we need to continue to evangelize and speak about. As a result, I'm a activist and advocate for cannabis essential workers. And I think that there's opportunity for some of these funds to be earmarked for childcare credits for cannabis essential workers. As a law school student, and I was working 3 jobs during law school, and I had a newborn when I started, I couldn't have completed law school without childcare subsidies that I received in the state of Florida. So I want to give other people the opportunity, especially young women, to participate in the industry. And I think the lack of childcare can be a potential barrier for individuals' involvement in our industry and the learning opportunities. So one of the suggestions is childcare credits for essential workers. In addition, housing credits have been discussed in housing programs, so I'm not going to belabor that point, but I completely support that. When we talk about education, there's a lot of skills training conversations, but I really would like to have us think to the future and building bench strength. And again, for cannabis essential workers, having scholarships for them if they're in the cultivation area to go to an agricultural program so they can expand their knowledge, pursue MBAs, go to law school, and also start enroll in pharmaceutical programs so that we can build a very competitive market for the state of New Jersey. I see that legal aid and contract review support has come up. This is critical for eliminating or mitigating predatory contract situations. So I want to emphasize that point. Also, in Black and brown communities around the world, there tends to be an overemphasis on the cultivation area of agricultural generally, but even in the cannabis industry. I think there's opportunity to support these communities by giving them funds for equipment for processing so they can move closer to the more profitable end of the business. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie DeVore, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. I want to start out by saying that I am so encouraged by this tonight. I'm so thankful that my friend and neighbor told me about it last minute and I was able to do it, because in the times that we are living in, wow, to feel hope is an amazing thing. And I'm so thankful to everyone involved with putting this on tonight and the amazing people who have spoken so far. I am just astounded. I'm speaking tonight as a resident of Bergen County, but I am originally from Sussex County. And so while not a county that's noted with the impact zones, I want to speak about it a little bit because it is a county in New Jersey that has a lot of socioeconomic disenfranchisement and an area that has been certainly impacted by the opioid epidemic. So I'm also speaking as a former criminal prosecutor, and I'm speaking as a mother. I'm also speaking mainly tonight as the sister of a sibling who survived a 10-year opioid addiction. And so, like so many white middle-class people, even those of us who have always considered ourselves liberal progressives, we have not necessarily become truly invested in and activized by this decriminalization movement and the fight to end the failed war on drugs until it impacted our white family members directly. And I just want to say, I always try to say that because it's really important to be real about that. And I believe Mr. Wood mentioned earlier, that so many areas in New Jersey who did not opt in, right, for cannabis due to this bias are also areas that have been ravaged by the opioid epidemic. So that disconnect there is really important. And so any education and outreach that can be done in those areas, I think, is really critical. One of the main things I want to state tonight is that any efforts that are put into services for those who are using drugs and or trying to stop using drugs must absolutely be rooted in the principles of harm reduction, period. It is so critical. I could go on and on about it forever. That's just, the marijuana maintenance program, as I know someone in the industry used to say, is probably what saved my brother's life and why I'm not talking about a deceased sibling, but a sibling who's alive. And so recognizing those principles, which are data-driven, one of the first things you guys talked about, right? Data-driven is so critical. And I hope that that can be a primary focus. I also just want to say how meaningful it is to someone who's been impacted by the war on drugs personally, to hear someone who is employed by the state of New Jersey say publicly that the aim of this evening and your entire agenda is to right the wrongs of a failed drug war. It's so meaningful to hear you say that. And I'm so thankful for the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go up and repeat some names just to make sure that we didn't miss anyone or anyone didn't come back, didn't start the meeting late, and I'm going to be going through them very quickly. So please listen out for your name. And if you are here, just raise your hand electronically. Zach Katzen, Catherine Gutterson, Tisha Harris, Dennis Brown, Jay Lassiter, Rhonda Wardlow Hurley, Reva Foster, Stephen L. Young, Cheryl Spalding, Jeffrey Sutherland, Ivy Lee Pickens, Kyle Rosner, Edward Lameau, Samuel D. Richter, Todd Edwards, Miriam Saluki, Lincoln Grattan, Anna Delgado, Gail Muhammad, Shakira Abdul Ali, Kay Price, Edward J. Tyson, Thomas H. Pyle, Dwayne Williams, Nafisa A. Goldsmith, Charlene Walker, Zelly Thomas, Stafford Miller, Deborah Joyce Dow, Sarika Gupta, Diana McElroy, Stephen P. Lehman, Tanisha Gibbs, Diane Genko, Tracy Wells Huggins, Bill Barlow, Brian McAllister. If you are here, please go ahead and raise your hand. Danelle Parker Mason, go ahead.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for this panel. My name is Danelle Parker Mason. I have a small group called Parker Mason Management. It is a realtor and notary business. I just want to say that I don't think that, I guess, grants and different, I'll just say, opportunities that hopefully might get into the hands of Black and brown people are the way. Just my ex-husband is has been personally affected by the war on drugs, and whenever there was an opportunity or a position that came about that could benefit him, he did not have the means or the education to apply in order to be able to get what he needed. I think that if we are going to use these tax dollars to help Black and brown people, and a radical idea, I think it is to provide an opportunity where you give Black men jobs. In my mind, I was a social worker, worked in a state prison for a very long time, and I worked for drug court for a while. I know that employment is the way. I know that at the time, quiet baby, it was about $40,000 to keep an inmate in prison. If we can give all Black men jobs and pay them at least $40,000, I know that would give them an opportunity to provide for their families, and which will bring communities back together. I don't know if that's even possible. You said $1 billion. I don't even know. But if it is going to go to law enforcement, I think that should be a line item budget that would just hire Black men or Black women to go into law enforcement, and that should be their salaries. If we are going to mend it, let's put the money where it caused the most pain. That's basically it. I just think it's great what you guys are doing. I think that even being college educated and having a business, I worked for a realtor firm, and I knew everybody in the room knew that as a notary, I could do loan closings, I could do loan signings and make great money. But you know what? They never told me, and they made sure I didn't know about it. So sometimes there's people in power who know things, who will make sure that the people who need it do not get it. So we need to make a direct link that this tax dollars go directly, not through another source, through a grant, through someone else, goes directly into the hands of the people who need it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. And good night to baby. Rosemarie, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Commissioners Barker and Nash. I was really looking at this from an appreciation for everything that everybody had to say, but I also am looking at it as a new revenue stream for new issues and new strategies for reinvestment with a legacy. And with that, I mean, one of the things that was really that stuck with me was the concern of younger adolescents, teens getting involved in illegal activity in terms of drugs and all of that conversation that was going on. And so with that, I'm hoping that more than half of the pot goes toward programs that will result in improved and beneficial, well-equipped young adults as they are approaching college, etc. And so some of those activities that I was hoping would be included is, for example, family counseling, and with a lean toward communication. I think that would certainly restore the core of Black and Brown families. Teen mediation programs, so that they are able to talk, communicate with each other, and ultimately would reduce, I think, crime and violence against each other and all of that other good stuff. In addition to, someone earlier had mentioned arts. I like to say that as STEAM, in addition to those STEM programs, but include arts like fashion design, and perhaps they could learn how to play golf so that they would be able to exchange ideas on the golf course as is done today by adults. Language classes, tennis classes, and those things that would equip and put more tools in our young adults' toolbox, if you will, so that they can use those different skill sets to create options for themselves and to perform with more financial benefit.
Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Reverend Dr. Leslie Robinson Harris, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you, commissioners, for this opportunity. I have a couple of points I would like to add to this discussion. When I think about the funding, I think the funding should be used to do more than fund and create double dipping for law enforcement, as they receive funding for substance abuse and misuse from various sources. And this funding would be more appropriate to be shared with mental health organizations and other groups which will be willing to assist individuals through holistic methods. As research shows, when individuals receive appropriate wraparound services such as housing, mental health, employment, and education, they thrive in society, as cannabis is no longer seen as self-medication. It is also appropriate to see holistic care as harm reduction. I understand the stigma of cannabis use created by the war on drugs and other anti-drug marketing tools. However, when mindsets are changed and the thoughts concerning uses of cannabis mirrors the usage of alcohol, the stigma attached to cannabis use will be changed. And funding can also be used to assist communities understand what harm reduction looks like and how it can be helpful for the community as a whole. Harm reduction is not a method which promotes or tolerates addiction or poor choice, but rather harm reduction gives individuals and their families ways to be safe and decrease the need for hospitalization, death, and other psychosocial factors which make misuse a norm. And as with needle exchange and substance testing, harm reduction centers could assist with the safe usage of cannabis devoid of products which may cause additional physical harm or even death. And also the funds can be used to educate in the community. This is the key, educating our communities, giving funding for communities to have town halls, community workshops, and educational services in schools beyond the DARE program will be beneficial. It is also important for the voice of community members who are directly affected to be heard so that their needs may be met. These are the individuals who believe that community government does not care, nor does it see their needs as important. These are the individuals who would be productive citizens if they had appropriate services and education available. I want to thank you again for this opportunity as a pastor of a church in Riverton, New Jersey, and as the board treasurer of New Jersey Harm Reduction Coalition. I thank you.
Thank you. If there, Commissioners Nash and Barker, that is the last of the registered speakers. We will open the floor now to anyone who wishes to speak. If you raise your hand, I see one. Okay. Laura Achipinti, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Laura Acapinti, and I'm going to be really quick. I would like to ask, as many people have said, that you do not fund law enforcement with this money. The police are well funded and have everything that they need. I see it as any money goes towards them. It actually is a slap into the face to the communities that you are trying to help. I ask that you continue to hold Zoom sessions like this and actually in real life roundtables to continue to ask the Black and brown communities what they would like. I think we all can agree that Black and brown communities were the ones targeted by police over the war on drugs disproportionately, and that their voices need to be the loudest. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Alex Staropoli, go ahead. Alex
Thank
Staropoli.
you. Yep, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. Commissioner Barkner, Commissioner Nash, thank you for the opportunity to testify this evening. My name is Alex Staropoli, and I'm the Director of Advocacy and Communications at Fair Share Housing Center. As you know, this is the first year that cannabis revenue will be available in the state budget, and the first time the Commission has the responsibility to make recommendations about how that revenue should be spent. These dollars must be reinvested into those communities most harmed by the war on drugs, and cannabis prohibition in particular. I want to emphasize that this money should not be spent on law enforcement, the very entity that fueled the drug war and disproportionately harmed communities of color in our state. Revenue from cannabis sales must be used to rebuild communities that have been historically disinvested in and most harmed by cannabis prohibition. For us at Fair Share, it's especially important that these monies be used to safeguard access to safe, healthy, and affordable housing. Housing is the cornerstone of both individual and community health and well-being, yet New Jersey has a deficit of housing for those in need. We also have thousands of affordable homes that are in desperate need of maintenance and repair. Revenue should be used to expand access to housing. All New Jerseyans deserve to have a roof over their head. Additionally, we think it's also important that revenue be used to address New Jersey's alarming racial wealth gap, particularly fueled by the war on drugs. Given the role that homeownership plays in generating wealth, we recommend the consideration of programs that will help expand access to home ownership in those communities that have been most harmed by the war on drugs. These programs should focus on first-generation homeowners instead of first-time homeowners and should ensure that program participants are able to purchase properties in areas where home values are appreciating rather than depreciating or remaining stagnant. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify this evening. We look forward to working with the Commission to make sure cannabis revenue is reinvested in a meaningful way.
Thank you. Madeline Trimble, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioners. I grew up in Essex County and now live in Bergen County, but I missed the earlier hearing targeted toward North Jersey, so thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'll keep my comments short and sweet. The most important thing I want to emphasize is that the Social Equity Fund should not be used to fund systems that have perpetuated the drug war in the past, particularly law enforcement. I'll defer to those who live in the impacted communities to the more specific allocation of these funds, but some examples of what I feel a good use of these funds could be are services targeted to previously incarcerated individuals and others with interaction with the criminal justice system. This could range from professional development opportunities for those communities to housing services. Funding to community colleges and to other job training programs, harm reduction services, and the funding of public defense services. Thank you again for the time to speak tonight and for considering our testimony as you make these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Maria Nina Scarpa. Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity and all the work that you've done. I would like to bring up 2 points. One, I think it's vital that all the children that have been affected and the teachers that work with them, et cetera, be made aware of adverse childhood experiences and how trauma-informed care can help the children that have maybe been suffering from disparities that the war on drugs have caused. And the second thing I'd like to ask is, not knowing what your next step is, I would like to see more of these public forums, but with the results printed out and allow the people who are not informed presently or here tonight to possibly learn about what the results were and maybe take a survey about which of those results are the most important to them. I've heard many people talk about not funding the police. I like the guy's idea from Violin about auctioning off your crops, et cetera. Vidra Chandler from Camden. There were so many things that are so important. So I would like to see how North Central and South Jersey have put together a similar response for the needs that are so important for the use of this revenue. And again, let me say thank you to everyone who has participated, as well as the commissioners who are doing this hard work. This is something that I don't think can be solved in 3, and I'm sure everyone would at least pay heed to this, if not possibly agree. It cannot be solved in 3 public hearings. But the fact that you're doing this is to be highly commended. I think that our communities that have been affected by the war on drugs deserve to have reparations made so that they can have equal opportunities. And we can do no harm any further than we have already done by our criminal system and our prisons and how we have treated these people. So again, thank you very much. And for the person who asked for a moment of silence, may we all continue to keep these people and all who are affected by this in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who spoke this evening. Commissioners Nash and Barker, you may go ahead with the closing remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Blake. As the cannabis industry develops and grows in New Jersey, it is important that we are reminded of how previous laws and policies under the guise of drug reform serve to harm marginalized communities in the nation. We heard it here tonight. Social equity will remain the focus of this commission as a matter of moral and societal principle, and that is why we're here tonight. Again, I thank you for your comments, for those who spoke, and for everyone that joined us this evening. Thank you. Commissioner Barker.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. And as you stated, thank you, public. Thank you, South Jersey, North Jersey, and Central Jersey for representing, for letting your voice be heard, for sharing your thoughts. You are absolutely right. You know, these hearings are not enough, even though they are a start. And so we're excited, you know, to really think through how we can continue to have these community conversations. Please please refer to our website for more updates and general information. Please continue to share your thoughts and comments in writing. And from here, for us, we're going to work with the other commissioners and staff at the CRC to incorporate the feedback that you gave us over the last 3 weeks. All of the feedback today, the feedback from North Jersey and Central Jersey, those will all go into our recommendation memo for the governor and the legislature to consider. And so in the meantime, we also want to share with you that the legislature will be starting their budget process at the end of the month. And so please be encouraged to reach out to the elected officials in your area. Let your voice be heard on their platforms, and just continue to stay involved in the process. We're so thankful to New Jerseyans for coming out and representing, and we continue to work with you. And we hope to continue to work with you as partners. And so thank you again, and have a blessed evening. Take care.
I'd just like to add that March 18th is the deadline for submitting your written comments. So please be sure and get those comments in. Thank you and have a good night.